It's hot. It's summertime. I think it's time to talk about some dive watches. I don't really talk about dive watches very often because I generally wear dress watches. I wear a lot of Cartier. I wear like vintage Patek when I can find it. I wear Piaget. I wear watches that are just like not. The actually antithesis of dive watches. They shouldn't even. You're not even supposed to pour champagne on the watches that I wear, right? Which is problematic for me, right? But I see I laugh at myself too. But the point is, there are dive watches out there that folks don't really talk about all that often, and they're from great brands. And it's because I think that people, were forced kind of by media to talk about the same freaking watches over and over again. And it's like Rolex Submariner again and again and again. And it's a little bit boring. And I love the Sub. There's no question about it. But there are fantastic dive watches out there that I think get me excited about that category of watch. And that says a lot because that category of watch doesn't really excite me much at all. It's just not my favorite category. So today we're talking about 5 dive watches, all from different price points, that I think are interesting. I think they're watches that, generally speaking, people don't have. They don't choose these watches, sometimes because they're overshadowed or whatever it may be. But all of these watches deserve your attention. I'm not really going to go in a particular order here, but Resence just released their Type 5L. Fantastically beautiful watch. Rather large, I will say, at 46 millimeters in diameter, and rather expensive at $35,000 in price, but awesome. I mean, this is interesting, divergent, independent watchmaking, and I think that this whole full loom idea is amazing. I think that one of the greatest watches of the last 20 years is the Lange Datograph loom. I think it's one of the greatest watches. And I think that these heavy loom watches that don't just loom the numerals and hands, are incredible. Especially if the dial is just coordinated well. It's just so shocking and jarring that it's amazing. So this watch to me is genius. Obviously, you've got the classic, Resence, a ROCS system that allows you to manipulate and tell the time in this, very techie, fluid manner. These watches appeal, obviously, because they're rather expensive, $35,000. They're appealing to a fairly small group of people, particularly because at $35,000, you also aren't getting this like huge name recognition, right? But I love that. When you buy a Resence at $35,000, you're getting all watch. You're getting nothing else. You're getting all watch. You're not paying for name brand because no one's going to know what it is anyway. You're getting all watch. I'm a big fan of this brand. At 46 millimeters, it is definitely too big for my wrist, but there's a whole world of you people out there, from IWC pilots to Panerais, that this watch would be fantastic. And I tend to believe, I've seen photos, that because the watch doesn't really have lugs anyway, it's going to wear incredibly well. But really just overall, not only an interesting watch, but just beautiful. I love the tones of gray here. I love the muted oranges, the pale blues, the whites. Everything about this watch to me is flawless. I know it's weird, but I think it's flawless and a perfect dive watch. Next watch, we're going all the way down in price, basically $30,000 down in price, down to $4,650 to a watch that I was just with the other day, which is the Tudor Black Bay 58-925, a sterling silver Tudor. This is not something anybody expected. It's not something people have talked about all that much since it was released a couple of years ago, and I think it's perfect. I think that the pairing of the silver with that taupe brown color dial and bezel is flawless. I think that the idea of using silver, it's a metal that patinates, but it's not copper, which is great, but definitely used quite a bit from other brands, right? From Panerai and Oris and just Tudor as well, all over. Silver's different. Silver's different. It was used 100 years ago in watches, and it hasn't really been used since. You go back in time, you can find Cartiers that were made in silver. This is a metal that feels precious because of its weight, because of its density, but is surprisingly affordable. I really love this watch. I think it is the greatest Tudor currently in production. And that's, of course, in my very humble opinion. But this watch comes on strap. It comes on NATO. I think on NATO specifically, out of this world home run. And I'm a big Tudor fan. I love the Black Bay Pro. I love the GMT. I love all of it. This watch to me is flawless. The next watch I want to talk about is a little bit smaller than the Resence, but not so different in price. This is the Royal Oak Offshore Diver in green. Stainless steel case, 42 millimeters in diameter, 14.2 millimeters in thickness, 300 meters water resistance. This watch is awesome. And I don't think this watch gets a lot of credit because I think of just the association with having to buy it to get a regular Royal Oak. Right? That's kind of what this offshore collection and really the code, they've kind of gotten a bad rap because people are forced into them in order to buy a Royal Oak. And that's not, I mean, it's fair for AP, of course. They want to build a credit history before they go and allocate you something that's really valuable and really special. But these watches are great. I actually think that this offshore diver is a rather tame watch. And I think it's rather respectful to the Genta history. Of course, it's not, right? It's not the design, but it's not overdone between the Grand Tapisserie and the sizing and everything. I think it's actually a great piece. And at 42 millimeters, not super obnoxious. And that was really one of the big problems with the offshore collection forever, was that it was just so blown out of proportion. It was just so large and brickish, not elegant. And the whole point of the Royal Oak beauty was the fact that it, was the meeting place of elegance and industrial design. Now, is this watch uber elegant? No, it's not elegant like a jumbo. That's true. But the watch is cool. I think it's neat. At 42 millimeters, I couldn't personally wear it, but I know there are a million people that could, right? A million qualified buyers that could. And furthermore, that color combo is just perfect. Right? Obviously, we see the same thing happen with Patek, with their Aquanaut Grenade. And it just makes sense, right? It wasn't the super bright green that was kind of obnoxious. It's more of like this military olive sort of green that I think is muted but different enough. It's a statement, but it's not a loud statement. I think it's great. And at $26,500, it's not affordable per se, but I think it's a pretty fair price, relatively speaking. I think that the $26,500 is actually more fair than the $650 for an extra rubber strap. I think that's a little expensive. I think that if you're buying an AP like that, you should be able to get some straps, on the arm a little bit. I think the $650 is a little bit of highway robbery, but I'm a big fan of this watch. That may come as a surprise because I'm a Cartier tank guy, and this is the exact opposite of a Cartier tank. But the Royal Oak is, really just as a design, one of the most iconic and desirable, it's an everlasting design. The Royal Oaks of almost any iteration are going to be and remain collectible, recognizable forever. This isn't going anywhere. You see a Royal Oak on someone's wrist and you know exactly what it is. Everyone knows what a Royal Oak is. These are classic pieces. It's like having a Picasso on your wrist. Everyone looks at it and goes, oh, wow, he's got that. And that's what collectors look for too, right? Because maybe one day when they want to bring it to market, they want to have confidence that the thing that they bought has value. And you can't underestimate the classics. And this gets proven throughout the biggest collectible markets. I mean, think about legends like Basquiat and their place in the market. Not only is his style all over New York City iconography, he also sold a painting in 2017 for $110 million, the most expensive ever. And I bring up Basquiat specifically just because he just had another multi-million-dollar sale. But this one didn't benefit like a billionaire art collector. This time it was actually to benefit people like you and I, members of the Masterworks art investing platform. Masterworks has been a longtime sponsor of this channel that's distributed back over $60 million in total net proceeds to investors from their 23 exits to date, which is unbelievable. Masterworks breaks blue chip contemporary art offerings into share. They democratize the world of art investing, which has kind of been hidden and secret and held exclusively for the wealthy for decades. So now you can diversify your portfolio without needing millions of dollars or fine art expertise through this fractional ownership program. Just over 3 years ago, Masterworks offered this Basquiat painting to their investors for $5.7 million, and they just recently sold it for $8 million. So get this. So investors that put $10,000 into that initial offering walked away with a profit of over $2,600 after fees. So they're pulling out over $12,600 on that Basquiat. I mean, they were able to ride this wave of appreciation because Masterworks guided them, because Masterworks allowed for the fractional ownership. Masterworks had the resources and knowledge that this painting, this piece of art, was going to increase in value over time. So if you, my subscribers, want to take a look at Masterworks and their platform and explore their offerings, take a look at the link down in our description and head on over to Masterworks and see if art investing is a fit for you. The next watch here is kind of in that same vein, that green dive watch on a rubber band. And a rubber band to me is, key. I mean, everything I've pulled out so far has been on a textile or on rubber band. I haven't done anything on metal, which is funny because the Submariner, the most iconic dive watch, is on a metal bracelet and no other option. But I think that this is just such a more logical usage of material, right? And this watch is the JLC Polaris. I just tried this watch on at London Jewelers this week and I was blown away yet again. This is a beautiful Jaeger-LeCoultre. The dial, the texture, the finishing of the dial, the lacquer, the vignette, the detail on this dial, I think is actually better than the Royal Oak. I think at $11,100, this watch actually delivers. It actually makes the Royal Oak look like a ripoff, even though I don't think it is. I think it's actually a fair, relatively speaking, price for that watch. This watch just represents so much value. It's insane. The JLC brand, of course, is not the Audemars Piguet brand, not a question. But if you're in the watch world and you know watches and you know what to look for, this watch has it. The level of detail, the balance, the quality of the rubber strap, everything about it, the movements, the brand heritage, everything is flawless and so comfortable on the wrist. When I put this watch on, and again, I'm not a dive watch guy, so I wouldn't wear it, right? But when I tried this on, $11,100, I said, this just makes sense and I want one. And green's my favorite color, so I'm a sucker for green. I want one. That's how good this watch is. This watch is so good, it can sell a dive watch to someone who has zero interest in dive watches. That's how good this is. One extra little detail is that automatique signature. It's so small, discreet. It's it's not a priority at all, right, to communicate. And the font is perfect. This watch is truly flawless. The only thing I might change is go from a contrast date window to a matching date window. I could see that. Frankly, I personally don't even need a date window. I'd be happy if this watch had no date window. I'd prefer it, but it's not a deal breaker for me. It's just such a beautiful, beautiful piece. And at $11,100, it is Submariner money. And I think it's infinitely more interesting than a Submariner. I think it's infinitely better for its purpose, diving or, beach/summertime activities, right? Submariner is more and more by the year, kind of a piece of jewelry, kind of a shiny thing you don't want to mess up because not only of its price, but of the way it's finished and the way it's built and what it represents. It's a status symbol. These are actually these are watches that are built far more to take a beating, right? Just by the nature of their finishing and by the nature of their straps and materials, these watches are built to take a beating. I couldn't possibly love this one more. And the last watch I want to talk about is just the entire Zodiac Sea Wolf collection. In that $1,500 to $2,000 price point, these watches are a ton of fun. They've got great history and the amount of options, the color options they've got here. I mean, it's innumerable, right? There really is a color option, not to mention a complication. You can get a chronograph version of this watch at $3,000. But these watches they're an important piece of watch history, right? The Zodiac Sea Wolf is one of the original dive watches in watch history. It goes back to, 1952 or 53 or something like that. And it just plays an important role in that history. But what they've done with color is special. No one's done it. This amount of variation, and because the price point is so approachable, relatively speaking, for a luxury watch with heritage, they could just have fun without looking indecisive. Right? If Rolex did that, they look stupid, right? Rolex needs to be more decisive, has to keep a smaller catalog, has to show confidence. Zodiac, their price point, they could just say, hey man, we make great watches. Everyone loves the Sea Wolf and want to make one in all these different color combos. And we're always messing around and we're always playing around. And when you find the one that resonates with you, buy it because it's fun and you're going to love it, right? Are these watches perfect? No. Their lugs are a little bit long. That's true. Fine. But generally speaking, these watches are just about as good as it gets under $2,000. Now, the price points do vary a little bit for these Sea Wolves, depending on the limited edition and depending on the color combo, but still, these are awesome watches. And I think the moral of the story is here, even though I'm not a sports watch guy, I'm not a dive watch guy, I can still look at this category and find things that are redeemable, find things that are interesting, find things that are worthy of owning. And I can speak, I think pretty passionately. I think that you can attest that I'm pretty passionate about today's video, pretty passionately about the subject. And I just encourage you guys to do the same when it comes to spaces in the watch industry that you don't generally gravitate toward. Like if you don't know what's special about vintage Patek because you're more of a modern Breitling guy, I'll just challenge you to say and maybe look into it a little bit. Maybe try to explore and educate yourself. And it's a hobby after all. So why spend your time on the hobby if it's not to make your point of view more well-rounded and make your time go by in this hobby? And what better way to make time go by than reading and exploring and looking at these different photos and histories and colors and proportions? That's it. You don't need to be a Cartier guy to poke around the Cartier market. You never need to buy one. But I just think I'm trying to be an advocate here for pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. Like I did a couple of episodes ago with the whole women's watches thing. It's not my comfort zone. I don't talk about women's watches. It's not my thing. Not interested. But when brands do the right thing, you want to give credit. You want to push yourself to understand what's cool about it, and understand what's beautiful about it, and why in words they did such a good job. What about their performance was so special? The Longines example, the Tudor example, be it the build quality, be it the proportions, be it the rubber strap, be it the taper of the strap, be it the material or the texture of be it the dial pattern, be it all these different things. You got to look at these watches and say, what gets my heart going? And even if it's not in your favorite genre, mine's dress watches, and this is dive watches, yeah, you should still be able to look and say, that's really neat. They did a great job with that. Zodiac did a really great job in democratizing like a important heritage dive watch and bring in like color and make it fun. Resence did a really great job creating something that's never existed before. Maybe not even theorized. Not to mention beautiful, but that may be subjective, but totally different. Tudor did a great job bringing back a metal from essentially the horological dead, the graveyard. That's cool. A Black Bay is a pretty mainstream watch, right? But you go down the street, almost everyone's, not everyone, but you know what I'm talking about. They're so popular, they're so common, they're so popular. But that doesn't make them boring. I mean, there are so many variations, and some of them are just wild and incredible. And even the basic ones are great. Tudor's doing a great job. But anyway, long story short, push yourself out of your comfort zone, explore things that you're not, generally running toward, because if you're in this hobby, what else are you doing? I mean, have some fun, expand your horizons, and take a look at some watches that maybe you wouldn't have otherwise. You wouldn't have subconsciously. So go do it consciously, do it with intent. Look at vintage pieces, look at Cartiers, whatever it may be, right? Look at Pilot's watches. Go dive into the history of Breitling, for God's sakes. It doesn't matter to me. Into the tachometers. I don't care. Right? I just love this hobby, and I love sharing it with you guys. And today I wanted to push myself out of my zone and talk about dive watches. So it's summertime. Put yours on, enjoy it. Comment down below what dive watch you're wearing today. I'm not wearing a dive watch at all. I'm wearing an Aventurine dial from Zelos, the Nova 2. Beautiful watch, but this is the opposite of a dive watch. So that's it. Get out of here. Hope you enjoyed today's episode, and I'll see you all soon.